vote to waive the rule, all agenda items requiring a vote of the board will be supported by a proposed motion to be distributed to commissioners at least 3 days prior to a meeting. The purpose of this rule is to avoid as much as possible governing on the fly. That's a good rule. Haste is one of reason's many enemies. At the September 29, 2022 Board of Commissioners meeting, where a transit discussion was the sole agenda item, there was no proposed motion for consideration on the agenda, and there was no motion to waive the advance notice rule. Nevertheless, the following motion was made and carried at that meeting: to direct the county administrator to develop a plan to expand public transit services in Emmet County using existing outside transit providers and allocate ARPA funds for the next 5 years not to exceed $450,000 for that purpose. Further, a working group of transit stakeholders to include the Little Traverse Bay Bands of Odawa Indians, the Friendship Center, and North Central Michigan College will be created to help develop the expanded services. The working group will be appointed by the Board of Commissioners and coordinated by the county administrator. Mr. Chairman, this resolution is a good example of why commissioners should have at least a few days, not a few minutes, to consider substantive motions before voting on them. The most obvious flaw in this motion is that it puts the cart before the horse. The board committed to spend up to $450,000 pursuant to a 5-year plan it hasn't seen yet, and failed to specify any follow-up oversight by this board. Well, thankfully, the board didn't permanently abdicate its responsibility by creating an independent transit authority with its own taxing power. The board did vote to transfer much of that responsibility to a working group for 5 years. Another obvious flaw is that in directing the county administrator to develop a plan to expand public transit services, the board failed to define the limits of the problem that it wants the plan to solve. So how are you, the board, and we, the public, supposed to know if the plan is succeeding or failing? It looks as if the board simply put $450,000 on the table and punted, just to make the issue go away for 5 years. I would like to see this board make the issue go away permanently by recognizing that it isn't the county's job to try to make mass transit work economically outside of an urban setting. There are other serious flaws, but my 3 minutes are about up. I think this resolution was made in haste, contrary to the board's own rules. I think it's reckless to spend that much of the public's money with so little deliberation, and I think the board should reconsider while it still can before any of the money is spent.